The big myth: calories in, calories out. Why does the old idea of calories in, calories out seem to break down after 60? On paper, the logic sounds flawless: burn more energy than you eat, and weight goes down. Yet for many older adults, that simple math stops working the way it used to. You might trim portions, add daily walks, or follow the same diet that kept you steady in midlife, and still notice the scale creeping upward. That's not a failure of willpower. It's a sign the calorie model alone doesn't explain what's happening inside an aging body. The calorie model still matters, but it's incomplete for older adults. Resting energy needs stay fairly stable through most of adulthood, but around age 60, the decline in daily calorie expenditure begins to accelerate. That change overlaps with other shifts in biology: the makeup of your tissues, the way digestion extracts fuel, and how hormones regulate appetite all begin to look different. In other words, the number on the label tells you less about how your body will actually use that food. Here's the core issue: calories measure quantity, not quality. They don't indicate how nutrients interact with muscle, hormones, or gut function. Even more, they don't reveal how much energy you will actually gain from that food. Take a practical example. Raw celery contains very few calories because its rigid fiber resists breakdown. Once it's cooked, that structure softens, and your body extracts more usable calories from the same plant. On the label, the calorie number looks identical, but what your body absorbs is not. That difference becomes increasingly relevant once you're over 60, when your system processes fuel with less efficiency. To simplify the physiology, first, muscle loss reduces resting burn, so your baseline use of calories falls. Second, appetite and brain signals shift, which can dull fullness cues and keep hunger turned on longer. Third, digestion and absorption change with age, so two people can metabolize the same meal in very different ways. Put those three lines together, and you can see why the neat calorie equation loses power at this stage. That's also what makes eating the same diet across decades misleading. At 40, you may burn that breakfast muffin quickly because active muscle tissue eagerly draws glucose into cells. At 70, with less muscle and weaker insulin response, that identical muffin lingers in the bloodstream longer, and the unused energy heads toward fat storage. The sensation of gaining weight just by looking at food comes from this difference in handling, not from imagination. It also explains why seniors often feel frustrated when careful calorie cutting doesn't lead to progress. You can be eating what feels like a tiny plate of food, yet see no movement on the scale. Counting calories logs intake, but it doesn't reflect what happens next. How much gets absorbed, whether it feeds muscle or whether it fuels more fat storage. 2 meals of equal calories. A bowl of lentils with leafy greens versus white bread with soda go on to produce opposite outcomes in energy balance, even though the math looks the same. That's where food quality starts to matter more than portion size. A calorie-labeled snack doesn't tell you whether it contains the protein that preserves lean tissue, the fiber that steadies blood sugar, or the vitamins that assist energy production. For seniors, those differences often decide whether you slowly accumulate fat or maintain stability. So while calories still serve as a baseline, treating them as the full story is misleading. Let's take the protein fiber example. A simple swap of processed starch for beans, lentils, or chicken instantly changes your body's internal response. Muscle loss slows down, hunger eases, and sugar levels stay in check. By contrast, that same calorie number spent on cookies or soda leaves hunger heightened and fat gain more likely. If you feel stuck, the practical microaction is this. Instead of tracking each number, choose 1 week where your goal is only to focus meals on protein and fiber quality. We'll walk through safe targets later, but even this shift often produces a noticeable difference. When you expand the focus this way, weight management at 60 and beyond becomes less about subtraction and more about nourishing what your body still needs. aggressive and reduced diets ignore the fact that chronic hunger signals get louder as restriction rises. That survival drive is powerful, and it will push you off track no matter your discipline. Older adults are especially vulnerable to this spiral. Cutting calories too sharply leaves them fatigued, weaker, and paradoxically still struggling with weight. A strategy built on nutrient-dense foods interrupts that spiral, providing fuel that the body can actually manage. Of course, this doesn't mean calories are meaningless. They remain part of the picture, but after 60, they are not the whole picture. Think of them as one column in a spreadsheet rather than the entire report. The other columns, protein density, fiber content, micronutrients, and hormonal response, become equally, if not more, important as aging progresses. And when those factors clash with the simple subtraction model, the subtraction loses. So, the take-home point for seniors is that eat less and move more still is truth, but stripped of context, it's incomplete advice. Energy needs do decline, particularly around 60, when changes speed up. But the shift comes less from a broken metabolism and more from measurable biological changes. Lean tissue loss, altered appetite signals, weakened digestion. The calorie model doesn't disappear. It just becomes less reliable on its own. That realization sets up the next logical question. If the myth has limits, when exactly does metabolism itself start to slow? Many people assume it's already downhill at 30 or 40, blaming any gain on a sluggish furnace inside. But pinpointing when the real slowdown kicks in matters, because it separates cultural myths from what research truly shows. Metabolism after 60, nature's slowdown. Metabolism after 60 is often talked about as if it simply shuts down, but the truth is more measured. Large studies tracking thousands of people show that both basal metabolic rate, the energy you burn at rest, and total daily energy expenditure remain fairly steady from your 20s through your 50s. The more noticeable decline typically begins after about age 60, and researchers estimate it averages under 1% per year for total energy expenditure. That change might sound tiny, but over months and years, it adds up to a very real difference in how the body handles food and weight. This later life adjustment often catches people off guard. Many assume a sluggish metabolism set in much earlier. So when the real drop becomes visible in the 60s, it coincides with other life changes, retirement bringing less structured activity, more time at home, or the onset of medical limitations. The result is that the decline often arrives at the same moment when lifestyle naturally becomes less active, creating the impression that the body has suddenly started working against you. Why does this slowdown happen in the first place? The research points to several factors working together. One is muscle loss, also called sarcopenia, which begins gradually in midlife but accelerates in the 60s. Muscle is metabolically active tissue, meaning it burns calories even when you're at rest. Less muscle means less natural energy burn. Another factor is reduced daily activity. Without commuting, working, or doing steady physical tasks, day-to-day movement shrinks. Finally, there are tissue-level changes. Organs and tissues consume less energy per cell as they age. So even if muscle and activity were perfectly maintained, energy use would still dip slightly with time. Put simply, muscle loss lowers your baseline burn. Reduced activity trims your daily energy output. Tissue efficiency shifts, and each cell uses less energy. The combination creates what feels like a sudden shift in how responsive the body is to food. You can eat the same meal plan that worked for you years ago, yet notice steady weight gain over time. This isn't because you've drastically changed your habits. It's because the internal machinery now requires fewer calories to maintain itself. To understand how this actually plays out, consider an example. Two people reach age 70. One has been doing resistance training 2 or 3 times per week since middle age, while the other has stayed active with walking and light chores but avoided strength work. Both appear fairly healthy, but their metabolisms now look very different. The individual with preserved muscle can handle a higher calorie intake without storing excess fat, whereas the one with less muscle requires fewer calories just to stay balanced. The difference isn't about discipline or willpower, but about the amount of engine each person has left in their system. This explains why metabolism at 60 and beyond feels like it has slowed, even if it doesn't technically collapse overnight. The adjustments are gradual. Less efficient handling of carbohydrates, slower use of fats, and a diminished ability to build or preserve muscle from the same protein you consumed in younger years. The system is still running, but at a steadier, quieter pace. A useful way to think of it is that your metabolism shifts gears instead of breaking down. It hasn't stopped working. It simply operates at a level that demands more conscious support. The question then becomes, what can be done? At this stage of life, the most researched ways to blunt the decline are resistance exercise and consistent protein intake. Resistance training doesn't have to mean heavy weights in a gym. Body weight movements, resistance bands, and modest weights all help muscle fibers stay active. Protein should also be spread across the day, at breakfast, lunch, and dinner, because older muscles don't respond as efficiently to a single large dose at night. Giving the body steady protein cues makes it more likely to hold onto lean tissue. Together, these steps counterbalance the slower energy burn and keep metabolism more responsive even in later years. It's worth noting that cardio exercise, while extremely valuable for heart and lung health, is less effective at preserving muscle. That's why someone who walks every day can still end up losing strength and struggling with weight control. The most effective approach is a combination. Maintain cardiovascular work for endurance and health, but add in 2 or more sessions a week of strength-focused activity to protect muscle. The balance helps sustain mobility and slow the metabolic dip. Nutrition also plays an important role beyond protein. Many older adults unintentionally eat less as their appetite declines, but they often reduce protein and nutrient-dense foods first. This speeds up muscle loss and weakens metabolism further. By intentionally choosing foods rich in protein, beans, dairy, lean meats, fish, eggs, legumes, and spreading them evenly across meals, you give the body material to preserve muscle tissue. Pairing protein with fiber-rich foods like vegetables, oats, or lentils steadies blood sugar and supports digestion, reducing the energy crashes that make overeating more tempting later in the day. Daily movement outside of formal exercise also makes a hidden but significant difference. Tasks like gardening, housework, standing while working on hobbies, or taking short walks all count as background activity that keeps calorie burn higher. It may not feel like structured exercise, but this movement fills in the gaps and prevents energy expenditure from falling too sharply. In fact, research shows that these simple daily choices often have as much impact as formal workouts on long-term calorie burn. Addressing metabolism at this stage is also about mindset, because the changes are invisible until weight creeps up or energy dips. Many people feel betrayed by their own bodies or assume the slowdown is unstoppable. In reality, while the shift is real, it's not destiny. By consistently using strength training, spreading protein intake, and structuring movement into your day, you can slow much of the decline and maintain more independence, vitality, and balance than most assume possible. Think of this stage less as a breakdown and more as a recalibration. A body past 60 is not incapable, it's efficient in different ways. You can't reset it to behave like it did at 20, but you can partner with it. Supporting your metabolism through smart food choices and consistent strength activity makes the difference between a slow, steady energy system that keeps you steady and one that gradually erodes without notice. With the metabolic shifts laid out, the next piece of the puzzle is to consider another hidden force shaping weight after 60. Even if your food and activity habits don't change drastically, hormones adjust behind the scenes. These chemical signals not only influence how much energy you use, but also where and how your body stores fat. And that's when many older adults notice sudden shifts. Weight settling into the belly or midsection without any change in diet. So the natural question becomes, why can hormones make weight stubborn even when the plate looks the same? Hormones, the silent weight changers. Hormones quietly reshape the landscape of weight after 60, often without any obvious change in diet or exercise. They operate beneath awareness, but their influence on where and how the body stores fat becomes visible on the outside. For women, menopause dramatically alters body composition. When estrogen declines, fat shifts from the hips and thighs toward the abdomen, a pattern confirmed by clinical research. Estrogen also affects how fat tissue is broken down and stored. Studies show that lower estrogen levels increase lipolysis in certain areas while simultaneously encouraging fat to deposit in the midsection. That's why so many women describe the confusing experience of slimmer hips, yet a thicker waist during their 60s. Men experience a slower but equally meaningful change with andropause. Testosterone gradually declines, and with it, the body's ability to preserve muscle mass. Because muscle tissue burns calories at rest, this loss reduces daily energy use. The same testosterone drop also favors fat storage around the belly. The result is a gradual accumulation of softer weight in the midline, which can seem resistant to exercise. While the progression is more gradual than menopause, the outcome is similar: weight redistribution toward the core and a harder time keeping muscle intact. These changes reflect how estrogen and testosterone guide the balance between fat and lean tissue throughout life. Both hormones influence muscle metabolism, bone support, and fat regulation. Once they decline, the tendency leans toward less muscle, more central adiposity, and altered storage patterns. Importantly, this doesn't mean hormones alone cause obesity. Instead, they interact with diet, physical activity, and lifestyle environments to create a new biological backdrop. Beyond estrogen and testosterone, other hormones participate in this shift. Leptin, made by fat cells, sends fullness cues to the brain. With age and larger fat stores, leptin and related appetite signals often become less precise, making satiety feedback weaker. That means hunger may persist even when the body's real need for energy is lower. Insulin sensitivity also declines in many older adults, which makes carbohydrate handling less efficient. Glucose that once fueled muscle or brain activity more directly is now more often stored as fat, particularly abdominal fat. These changes don't affect every senior to the same degree, but the broad trend tilts toward higher appetite and lower efficiency in energy use. For women, the hormonal experience of menopause layers discomforts together. Abdominal fat gain coincides with hot flashes, poor sleep, and fluctuating moods. Each of these symptoms compounds weight management challenges. For instance, disrupted sleep alters ghrelin and leptin signals, increasing hunger while reducing control. That makes it harder not only to manage weight, but also to feel in command of food choices. Many women report discouragement, describing their bodies as unfamiliar after decades of stability. This emotional weight compounds the physical one, making it harder to stay consistent with healthy habits. Men face a quiet but steady counterpart. The gradual loss of testosterone doesn't strike as suddenly, but over time it reduces lean mass, bone density, and energy levels. When exercise becomes harder, whether from fatigue, weaker joints, or reduced muscle, activity naturally declines. That reduction feeds back into more fat storage, particularly around the midsection. Men may not notice a sudden before and after image as women often do, but the slow layering of abdominal fat across the 60s and 70s can carry equal health risk. The medical concern here goes far beyond how clothes fit. Abdominal, or visceral, fat is more metabolically active than fat stored in limbs. It secretes inflammatory chemicals and increases risk for type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular events, and even cognitive decline. That's why abdominal weight gain after 60 is treated as a clinical risk factor, not just a cosmetic issue. The frustration many seniors feel, watching their waistlines grow despite maintaining sensible eating habits, comes from this invisible shift in chemical signaling, not from a failure of discipline. This unpredictability often leaves seniors searching for extreme diets or drastic exercise, hoping to reverse what feels unfair. But hormones don't respond to punishment. Instead, they require cooperation. Hormones create a different set of conditions under which weight and health must now be managed. Accepting that shift is not resignation. It's the first step in adjusting effectively. So, what helps counterbalance these changes? First, protein needs to climb higher and appear consistently across meals. Older muscle tissue responds less sensitively to protein signals, so 25 to 30 grams at breakfast, lunch, and dinner offers a better cue to preserve lean mass. Second, resistance exercise becomes critical. While walking and light cardio maintain heart health, they don't provide the stimulus muscle requires to stay full and metabolically active. Even simple band work or light household lifting can slow muscle loss. Third, timing carbohydrates earlier in the day helps match declining insulin sensitivity. Meals focused on starches and sugars late at night often lead to higher storage, while earlier carbohydrate intake is better managed by the system. These steps may sound modest, but they create measurable improvement in how hormones influence weight. A 70-year-old woman who readjusts her protein intake and keeps regular walks after meals can trim the impact of estrogen decline. Similarly, a man facing testosterone loss who commits to twice-weekly strength training and heavier breakfast protein will retain more lean tissue. Neither individual can eliminate hormonal changes, but both can reshape how strongly those changes tilt toward fat storage. Medical options exist, but are not universal solutions. Hormone replacement therapy, whether estrogen replacement for women or testosterone therapy for men, must be supervised carefully by a clinician. These approaches can relieve symptoms and moderate some weight changes, but they don't erase the need for lifestyle adjustments. No prescription neutralizes the impact of age entirely. Instead, medication may set a firmer stage, while diet, exercise, sleep, and stress control still carry the performance. Stress and sleep deserve special notice here. Cortisol, the body's main stress hormone, interacts directly with declining sex hormones to push fat toward the midsection. Nighttime wakefulness, stimulants, or chronic anxiety all amplify the effect. Seniors sometimes dismiss their disrupted sleep as an unavoidable nuisance of age. In reality, consistent sleep is one of the strongest tools against hormonal imbalances. Adequate rest calms cortisol, stabilizes appetite cues, and reduces the combined pressure of lower estrogen or testosterone on fat gain. Recognizing sleep as a metabolic instrument, not just a comfort, helps change priorities at this age. Understanding this hormonal picture means reframing weight gain as a physiological result, not a shortcoming. Just as adolescence is shaped by the surge of new hormones, later life is shaped by their decline. The rules of body composition change, but responding to them is still possible. Seniors are not powerless. Aligning protein intake with muscle needs, structuring physical activity with resistance in mind, timing meals in line with insulin responses, and rebuilding a healthy sleep routine collectively give back much of the stability aging seems to take away. The key lesson here is that changes in estrogen, testosterone, leptin, and insulin sensitivity rewrite the rules, but they don't remove choice. Hormones don't prevent progress. They simply require new strategies. This perspective reduces frustration because the blame shifts away from self-failure and toward an understanding of the body's natural timeline. From that understanding, practical action becomes the focus. With hormones accounted for, the next challenge looms large. Many seniors respond to these shifts by reaching for familiar diet plans, only to find that what once worked now misfires. The question then becomes, why do eating strategies effective in earlier decades so often backfire in the 60s? And what kind of plan actually supports long-term health now? Why diet plans fail seniors? Diets that many seniors once found effective often fail to deliver the same results later in life. And the reason isn't a sudden collapse in willpower. It's that the body now operating under these plans is different from the body that responded in midlife.